the best way to recognize that service and sacrifice and to say thank you is to make sure that our men and women in uniform are only sent into harm's way, or only sent to war as a last resort.
Like, wow.
Yeah. Green pen. Keep that there once you release. Nice. Hold. That's right below the white, it looks like.
I think you are a phenomenal asset in so many ways that people that I know that people may not know. And I've got to imagine that there is a position in this administration for you. Are you interested?
This is up to President Trump. Obviously, he's looking to assemble a team right now. If he asks me to serve in a position where I feel I can be effective to help him carry out his objectives, of course, I'd be honored to do that.
Tulsi Gabbard, born on April 12, 1981, in Leloa, American Samoa, is a notable American politician, United States Army Reserve officer, and political commentator. She became the youngest woman ever elected to the Hawaii State Legislature at age 21 in 2002.
Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today.
During the second round of Democratic primary debates in July 2019 in Detroit, Gabbard launched a critique against Kamala Harris, focusing heavily on Harris's record as a prosecutor. Gabbard accused Harris of being proud of her prosecutorial record while highlighting what she deemed inconsistencies, especially regarding marijuana enforcement and sentencing practices.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place.
Tulsi Gabbard, once a prominent Democrat and vice chair of the DNC, became a vocal critic of her own party long before aligning with Republicans. Her criticisms included the party's foreign policy, which she deemed too aggressive, and its handling of internal politics during presidential primaries.
I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's ridiculous,
who has spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party.
Despite starting her political career with progressive stances, Gabbard's dissent against Democratic leadership, particularly after her presidential bid in 2020, led her to leave the party in 2022, becoming an independent and later joining the Republicans in 2024.
The Democrat Party has no home for people like us. But we do have a home in the Republican Party where we are welcomed with open arms by President Trump and so many of you who love our country.
Illustrating her evolving political stance and consistent critique of Democratic policies, even before her formal endorsement of Trump.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Aloha. I know we got Hawaii in the house here. There we go. It is a privilege to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined two Gold Star families.
Joining these Marines' loved ones, I felt the sorrow that he shared with them in their loss. I felt and saw his sincere appreciation for these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price and their loved ones who continue to grieve to this day.
When we had our first memorial service in Iraq back in 2005, some of my fellow soldiers who are part of the brigade are here and can appreciate that experience. When we had hundreds of soldiers from the Hawaii Army National Guard's 29th Brigade Combat Team gathered in a memorial service, we paid our respects to the empty boots, the empty helmet and the rifle, representing one of our friends who had passed. And we stood at attention as the first sergeant started calling roll.
We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future.
Tulsi Gabbard began her military career by enlisting in the Hawaii Army National Guard in 2003, serving initially in a medical unit. Her deployment to Iraq in 2004 to 2005, where she served as a medical specialist, significantly shaped her views on foreign policy and military intervention. After returning, she transitioned to the military police and served in Kuwait from 2008 to 2009. Throughout her service, Gabbard was promoted from specialist to major and later to lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves. Her experiences in combat zones influenced her strong anti-war stance and criticism of regime change policies, making her military background a cornerstone of her political identity.
That's where going and actually looking again at our founding documents, looking at the Declaration of Independence, looking at the Federalist Papers,
Yes.
where we are reminded over and over and over again about how our nation's founders continued to say it's we the people, that our government does not exist without the consent of the governed. And this is the message I'm carrying everywhere across the country, is that if you are not happy with the direction that our country is headed, and I think that most people are not happy with it, this changes only when we take action. Only when we take action. There's no knight in shining armor that's coming to save the country. Our founders specifically built our country on the foundation of we the people taking ownership and responsibility for the kind of leadership that we want and the kind of future that we want. After all measures of diplomacy have been exhausted. Now, this is one of the many reasons why I think so many Americans turned out to vote for President Trump, is because he understands this. And we've seen how through his last administration, he didn't just talk about ending wars. He actually went out and did that work of direct diplomacy. He went out and met with dictators and adversaries in that pursuit of peace for the American people. So in his next administration, and he was very vocal about this throughout this presidential campaign, that his goal is to end wars, not start them. His goal is to prevent World War III and nuclear war, and spoke many times about things that Kamala Harris never brought up during her campaign, about how he understands the seriousness of the stakes and the threats that we face as the American people, specifically because of the foreign policy decisions made under the current administration.
Donald Trump, gearing up for his second term, has begun forming his administration with key appointments, including Susie Wiles as Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Tom Homan as Border Czar, Representative Elise Stefanik for Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz for National Security Advisor, former Representative Lee Zeldin for EPA Administrator, and potentially Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. These selections reflect Trump's focus on immigration enforcement, deregulation, and an assertive foreign policy.
And so I can tell you, as someone who still wears the uniform, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, as someone who's deployed to multiple war zones in different parts of the world, the most important responsibility that any president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. And it's important on this day as Veterans Day, as well as you said, as every day, to recognize the best way to ensure our gratitude is shown to those who serve and their families is to make sure war is a last resort, and if it is required, that we take care of our men and women in uniform if and when they come home.
Tulsi is so patriotic and fearless, a true American.
It really gave me hope in seeing the results of this election as the American people, the vast majority of the American people, didn't fall for the lies and the propaganda that they were pushing out, and they saw through them. They saw that in Kamala Harris and in the Democrat elite and those who were backing and propping her up in the propaganda media and big tech and so forth, they saw that these are people who don't really care about the American people, that Kamala Harris was saying things that she thought would convince voters to support her. Whereas when you look at President Trump, throughout the campaign, he delivered the same message everywhere he went, regardless of the demographic of people that he was talking to. He wasn't trying to curate his message to tell people just what he thought they wanted to hear. And he was addressing very real issues that the American people are most concerned about.
With Tulsi Gabbard's unique blend of military experience, having served in Iraq and Kuwait, her outspoken critique of U.S. foreign policy, and her recent transition to the Republican Party, she brings a wealth of experience and a fresh perspective to political discussions. Her ability to appeal across party lines, combined with her strong views on national security and anti-interventionism, makes her an intriguing candidate for high-level positions.
President Trump is going through, and I know this is how he's spending a lot of his time right now, is looking at making these decisions about who he wants to serve on his team and in his cabinet. If there is any way that I can help achieve that goal and objective of preventing World War III and nuclear war, of course, I'd be honored to serve.
Now, where do you think Tulsi Gabbard could fit into Donald Trump's administration, given her background and political evolution? If you enjoyed this, hit like. If you didn't, hit the gym, because no one likes a hater. Don't forget to share and subscribe.